shifting gears massively, not even really talking about AI here. A change that has been long coming down the pipes has come out the other end of the pipe for some people. Google, the headlines are flying around that Google Chrome is killing ad blockers, specifically like uBlock Origin, which I don't know how anyone browses the internet without an ad blocker, because whenever I like open one of the other browsers on my computer just for like some reason for experimenting, or use Safari on my phone, it's like unbearable to browse the web without ad blockers. And Google has been pushing this new update that changes fundamentally how extensions work, and by virtue of that breaks ad blockers. And so what's happened is a lot of people have noticed, hey, uBlock Origin was turned off, and some people could turn it back on. Some people, it just wasn't working. And so there's been a bit of a flurry of people saying Google's trying to kill ad blocking. They own massive advertising, like advertising is a huge chunk of their revenue. They own all like AdSense and everything. So of course, this is a monopolistic grab to make everyone see their ads. And like always, the reality is a little bit more complicated than that. Have you run into this story circulating, Perry? Has anyone told you, hey, Google's killing my ad blocker, before I go into why?
No, I've not seen that yet. I think I may have seen the headline splash by, but it didn't seem to affect the ad blocker that I use. And then also, mine, I think, got overshadowed by some of the other. There's been a whole bunch of cybersecurity news going by lately, so that's distracted my attention.
That's fair. My Reddit feed was filled with people posting about this. Makes sense for that place. And it isn't affecting all users. What's happened is, inside of the browser, the way extensions work is they use an application programming interface called Manifest, which maybe you've heard Manifest v2, which is what we're currently on in the Chromium engine, which is the engine that runs the Chrome browser as well as a lot of other browsers, including the one that I'm using, Vivaldi.
And even Edge.
And even Edge is a Chromium browser now. The only one that's not that I'm aware of right now is like Firefox, and then Safari is a WebKit browser. I'm not entirely sure on Safari. But that's beside the point. Chrome is like the largest browser by far, that like has the biggest market share. And the Chrome Web Store is filled with all sorts of extensions you can download. And forever, being in the world of cybersecurity, you're telling people to be careful of what extensions you install, because they have they have a lot of access to read and change data on websites. And this is what caused the problem. In Manifest v2, there's a feature called Web Request API, which allows any extension to intercept and modify any web traffic before it reaches the page. Just anything, broad scope. And it can also dynamically reach out and like take content from its own website that it knows to look to. So for an ad blocker, it would be like uBlock Origin's list of sites to block that they keep updated. It could dynamically grab that and say, okay, block anything coming from here before you ever see it. That's how it would work.
Yeah, that kind of acts like a proxy.
Yeah, exactly. But that's a lot of power for extensions to have. And there was a lot of malware that would be distributed through bad extensions, right? You can speak to that better than I can.
Oh, yeah. I've got a whole section of that in the book FAIK that I wrote of like, the future of AI scams is a lot of that could come easily through browser extensions. And you could get very personalized disinformation or scams that get sent through your web browser, just because of the fact that AI and just the ability to scrape the internet for things that are very personal to you could come at you through your web browser in this thing that you almost implicitly trust.
Right. And when it has access to inspect every network request and every piece of content that's being sent back and forth from your computer to whatever servers you're pinging, whatever website you're trying to go to, you're just like letting it in your house. So they're closing that loophole in Manifest v3, the new version of the engine that drives extensions. And they've replaced the Web Request API with a declarative Net Request API that works a little bit differently. And we're not going to get into the weeds because this isn't a podcast for extension developers. But basically, it is more performant and safer. It requires extensions to like predefine lists of rules and things if they're going to do any kind of web intercepts. They can't dynamically reach out to pages to like pull other resources to then mishmash into your page or use block lists. And so this affects a lot of extensions and their functionality, but people are particularly upset about ad blockers because the internet is unfreaking usable without an ad blocker these days. They have made some tweaks in response to some of the pushback to allow things like regex, which was not part of the initial declarative net request API. So you had to hard code URLs. You couldn't use like pattern matching, which was an even bigger nightmare, but that has since changed. But like the web request API, the old one, was never designed to work on every network request going in and out in a way that was performant. Like they didn't really think of that when they made it, but then ad blockers were just like, oh, we could use it this way.
Yeah.
So this is a result of them closing a security hole by adding a more secure API function for messing with web traffic that as a side effect has broken ad blockers. And not that I'm trying to apologize for Google, but this isn't necessarily a monopolistic ad grab. I'm sure they're not upset about it, but...
Well, I think it's a well-intentioned change of the way that works, for sure. The side effect of that is that for the next couple months, the ad block companies are trying to react to that and re-architect their systems in a way that's going to be compliant with that and plays to whatever new strengths that may even open up.
Yeah, and they are in the works. There's a uBlock Origin Lite version that works that way. Like their biggest hurdle is that they have to predefine this list of blocking rules. And then if they ever want to update it, they have to update the extension, and then it has to go through Google's store approval process and then get pushed to you who has the extension, and then you have to update it. So
and it makes a lot of sense, though, because you can imagine if there's a dynamic path that somebody could set that's going to go grab information that then could display on a website or manipulate the way the browser processes the information that goes to your website. As soon as somebody hacks that or knows how to get to the config of that through the browser, then you can manipulate it, and it could pull all bad stuff to your website instead of good stuff. So it makes a lot of sense to close those holes. The unintended consequence or the unfortunate consequences that it affects the way that some very legitimate pieces of software try to keep people safe.
And it's reminiscent to me of when Flash was killed, which was a hard day as someone who grew up as a Flash kid, but it made total sense. It just had too much power. And that's the state of extensions right now. So if you or someone you love is saying that Google has killed their ad blocker, now you know why. Now you know what's up. And really all we can do at the moment is kind of wait for these clever extension developers to find out better ways to do it. Or switch to a different browser that has built-in ad blocking, tracker blocking. Those exist too. And when that happens built into the browser level, you don't have to worry about those kind of permissions because it's at the browser level. So at that point, you just have to trust the browser developer.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah. So I guess we'll see what happens. Just figured it was worth addressing in the tech sphere on this episode. I'm still thinking about our last segment, though. That is not going to leave my brain. And we're going to wrap it up with something else that's scary. Is it scary?
Potentially scary. We're going to talk about humanoid robots and whether we are ready for that or not, because there's several companies working on them. We're going to look at one of those today.
Oh, can't wait for that. Stick around.